Now we're going to start into a whole new area, and we'll call this building a new consciousness. Building a new consciousness. You know, you've let go, and now you need to have an infilling. You always have to follow denials with affirmations. You have to do your affirmative work to build a total new consciousness. But when we begin to build a total new consciousness of prosperity, we often feel that we cannot have the things that we really want. Now, there's a definite type of formula for prosperity that we can all experience. We can use it kind of as a guideline into beginning to build a new state of consciousness. The very first idea that we want to consider is that we have a need, a desire within us. That's where you start. You have to know where you are. So you might say the first step is to know the need or the desire of my heart. That is what I need to start with. That each and every one of us has a cup to be filled. That's what a need is. A need is a cup to be filled. A desire is a cup to be filled, which we're placing before Spirit. So we're defining it. We're defining it. We define our need. The next thing that we need to do is to realize that the fulfillment of that desire, that need, exists in time and space. If you have a desire for a new home, new furnishings, new clothing, new friends, more love, whatever it is that you desire in your life, it exists in time and place. Because God certainly provided enough of us. There are plenty to go around. He provided an abundance of everything, whether it be money, whatever you need. The other day I saw this huge train load of cars coming down the tracks, and I thought, my goodness, look at all of those new cars. There's somebody there whose desire is for a new car, and goodness knows our motor companies are turning them out so that we can have exactly the desires of our heart. So we have to recognize that the fulfillment exists in time and space. Then we have to know that the fulfillment of that desire, that need, can come to us not only from known sources. Not only can we receive financial good through the sources which we are now receiving from, but we can also receive our good from unknown sources. You know, we may be receiving our good from our paycheck, from the work that we receive, from friends. We may be receiving love from friends. We may be receiving the good that we desire now in some channels. But God has infinite channels. There are many unknown channels which, by changing our thought and recognizing that, yes, we bless and give thanks for the channels which we now have, but we also rejoice and give thanks for the unknown channels through which our good may come. We have to be very careful not to say, oh yes, my good is coming to me. It's coming from Aunt Mamie or Uncle George or from my Social Security check or something like that. We can say, yes, I may receive from these channels, but there are unknown channels through which we can receive at any given time. I could tell stories by the hour of the unknown channels through which I have received good when I opened myself to it because I needed something at a particular time. And I said, Father, I have this need and I'm leaving it to you, and suddenly I would go to the mailbox and find the fulfillment of that need in a very strange way. Good that I had done years before, which came back to me at the perfect time when I needed it, when the need was there. So remember that the fulfillment can come from known and unknown sources. But it also is a mental attitude of knowing that the fulfillment of your desire is moving towards you right now. Accept it. If you are desiring a right and perfect mate, then know that the fulfillment of that desire is moving toward you. If you want companionship, if you want new things, begin to know This is the way that when I was looking for a right and perfect mate, I began to affirm that my right and perfect mate was moving toward me in time and space. And guess what? He did.
Listen to this story carefully.
I did. I affirmed that my right and perfect mate was moving toward me, and believe it or not, when we checked it out after we were married, sure enough, at the very time I was affirming that, he was beginning to take the steps which brought him all the way across the country to where I was at that particular time. So this truth really works.
I have to say that it works both ways, folks.
Right. So begin to accept the fact that the fulfillment is moving toward you and affirm that. Then take needed steps in preparation for this. If you're going to ask for something new in your home, are you going to wait until you get it to fix the home? Or are you going to prepare the home now? This is a very important idea, this idea of getting things ready. If you want a new rug in your house, are you going to wait to clean the floors and do the floors until the rug comes? No, you get ready for it now. When did we say the time of preparation was in your thinking? Now. This is a now time. So take any needed steps that you see need to be done to prepare for your good. Then, the very simple act of giving thanks. Giving thanks is a way of making it firm in your mind. Giving thanks that it is yours now. Whatever the desire of your heart, begin to give thanks for it. Give thanks for a loving Father who has abundantly supplied, and that good is coming to you now. Then release it. Release it and let go. And let God bring about the perfect fulfillment in His many channels. You have known channels, but God has infinite channels. Let go. Release it. If it comes back to mind, give thanks for it again, knowing that it can come to you in many ways, and then release it. This is a way that we can begin to set the mental attitude of bringing our good to us, through us, by the thoughts that we are holding in our mind, this idea that our desires can be fulfilled. We all can work with the law, and the law will bring about the fulfillment. Frank's going to give us some areas now where we can really begin to write down these needs that we have in our life that we want to see fulfilled, and that God will bring about in right and perfect ways.
This section is a pretty simple one. We're going to do some writing once again, so would you please take out your handout sheet. And once again, under the section entitled Prosperity, you will see two sections containing lines, and both of these sections have the headings PME. In the past section of our workshop, we took the top rows and identified on a physical, mental, and emotional level the blocks in our consciousness to prosperity. Now what we want to do with the second section is begin to list those things on the physical, mental, and emotional levels that we want to build into our consciousness in relation to prosperity. In other words, this is the affirmative side of the picture. And as we do this, we have to remember, folks, that random prayers will get random results, but specific prayers will get specific results. So on this second section here, this second block of PME lines, write down first of all, let's take the physical section first of all, those three lines that are headed P here. Write down what it is that you want to manifest in the way of prosperity on a physical level. If you just jot down a whole bunch of things, and that's sort of like praying randomly. What you want to do is pick out one or two items that you would really like to manifest on a physical level. Is it a new car? Is it a new wardrobe? Is it a different size bank account? Be specific. And don't let yourself be subject to the idea that, well, I don't deserve it, and it really can't come about. It's impossible. Just remember the basic truth principle that with God, all things are possible. And once we achieve the consciousness for something, we work with God, and that very good thing that we want will be manifested in our lives. So under the physical section, just one or two, maybe three items that you would like to manifest.
Maybe a new job.
Maybe a new job. That has to do with the physical level.
Really need.
Maybe some new furniture in the home. Just take a moment to do that. Then the second section has to do with the mental level. And this further has to do with those concepts about prosperity that you would really like to make a solid part of your consciousness. There might be a couple of concepts that you have been having difficulty with and that you identified in the previous section in this workshop. Maybe you want to really believe deep within yourself the idea that prosperity is spiritual, and that money is not one thing to be set aside over here, and then on the other side you have all of these spiritual aspects. Everything that we see in this world is an extension of our own spirituality. This includes the clothes we wear, the chairs that we're sitting on, the amount of money we may have in the bank, and that sort of thing. It's all an extension of our own spirituality. Prosperity is spiritual. Maybe that's an idea you need to work with. Or maybe you need to work with the idea of unlimited channels. I really want to believe in that concept, that there are an unlimited number of channels through which God can work to bring my supply to me. Or maybe one more example might be that I really want to believe in the concept that God's supply is unlimited. So often in our own lives, it would seem that supply is very limited, especially when you can't meet the monthly bills and that sort of thing. But the concept that we hold to, the concept in truth is that God's supply is unlimited. Spirit substance is everywhere present, an inexhaustible supply. So what is that concept, or what are those two or three concepts that you would like to make more a part of your consciousness in relation to prosperity? Write those down. And then finally, the third level has to do with the emotional level. And what are some of the positive feelings that you would like to hold concerning prosperity? Not mental concepts, but positive feelings. I would like to feel free. Feeling free is something that takes place on an emotional level. I would like to feel not guilty, which carries with it, of course, the idea of feeling free. You'll probably find that as you're listing some of these things that you want to make a part of your consciousness in this section here, that they're just the opposite of what you listed during the previous section in our workshop. Freedom from fear, freedom from guilt. The feeling that you might want to make more a part of your consciousness is a greater feeling of love. I want to feel more loving. And as you feel more loving, you will open up the way to greater material prosperity, prosperity of all kinds in your life. So these are the things that you want to write down on the emotional side here. You want to feel deserving of prosperity. That might be a greater feeling that you want to have. And that's the one that's very important. I think in the great deal of the counseling that I have done with people, and in my own individual case, I have discovered that when people have difficulty with prosperity, a common feeling that most people have is the feeling that I don't deserve it, that I have done something wrong and that type of thing. And of course this leads into a whole discussion on one's self-image, but we really don't have time to approach that in this workshop. But if you want to feel more deserving of prosperity, then write that down. And you may want to feel more forgiving and forgiven. So write that down, a feeling of forgiveness, whatever it is that you need to respond to on an emotional level. And now that we have identified these things, of course, we want to talk a little bit about some things to do to carry through on these things that we have written down, and Martha's going to discuss this.
Yes, and there are really many things that we can do to bring about the prosperity that we desire in our life. You know, the Father provided from the very beginning what we call divine ideas. Divine ideas which have infinite possibilities of expression in our life. These divine ideas were given to us from the beginning and are all that we have ever had and all that we've ever used to build our world, to build our body, to build our consciousness. And among these is one of the most important. Well, they're all equally important, but we often think of this particular one as being very important because it kind of comes out as a synthesis of many of the others. And this is the idea of imagination, the imaging faculty of mind, the imagination. And one of the best ways to bring about your prosperity is through this imaging faculty, to begin to imagine in your mind that which you desire in the outer, to begin to shape a mental image of what it is that you want to manifest. We're holding a mental image right now of what we are manifesting, and if we want to change it, then we have to change the image that we are holding. An outer way of doing this same thing of mental imagery is through the use of what is called a treasure map. A treasure map. Treasure mapping is a very fine way of externalizing your mental images. A lot of people say, well, that's programming. Treasure mapping is a pictured prayer. That's exactly what it is. Treasure mapping is a pictured prayer. It is a way of externalizing your mental images in the outer so that you can personally see what it is that you're holding in mind and what you want to hold in mind. The best way to go about it is to get yourself a large sheet of paper. That's the first act, and make it big enough so that you don't have to clutter it. Okay? Then you sit down and say, okay, now what is it that I want to picture in my life for myself physically, mentally, and emotionally? And then you get your handy little scissors in your hand. You do not go to work with a pencil at this time because that's lazy in, lazy out. You lazy input, lazy output. So you go to work with a pair of scissors and magazines, and you begin to cut out all the positive words and positive images that you want to picture on your treasure map. Now what this does is this immediately puts your judgment faculty to work, and you begin to select those things which you do want and reject those things which you do not want. You begin this process of selecting. You really begin to give the mind a picture of what it is you really want. You're making definite selections. So as you're going through the magazine, searching for those pictures which you want, looking for the right words, sometimes having to cut a word in half and put it together, and then you get them all together, and then you begin to paste them on this map. Make sure that you use large, colorful pictures that carry forth the idea. If you want to see yourself as a different person physically, then get a picture of something that's different from what you are, okay? And surround it with the words that you want to see manifested in the physical. If you want a new home, get a picture that it gives the impression of the type of home. If you want a new car, the type of car. Maybe not the specific car, but the type that you want. Okay? But always remember to put on there two things. One, a spiritual symbol and the words. Now the spiritual symbol can be the unity wings, a picture of light and spirit, a picture of Jesus Christ, plus the words, "This are something better. Thank you, Father." This are something better are the divine equivalent. So that way you do not find yourself limiting the good that comes to you. Always put that on your treasure map. Then, because in case you ask for a Cadillac car with wire wheels and what you really need is a station wagon, then the Father will bring that right and perfect expression to you. If you're asking for a station wagon and you really need a Cadillac car with wire wheels, then that will come. The divine equivalent, because we let Spirit bring about the right and perfect fulfillment. The second thing that you always want to put on your treasure map is money. And put on there money in the form of a check. Write out a check on the cosmic bank of God that gives you the money that you desire in your life. Or else put on there some play money in large denominations or real money as a symbol, so that you will receive the good with no attachment, that it will be free and it will move to you freely. This is the way to treasure map. Make it a large, and do not be afraid to put the things that you desire on there, because that may indicate that you're maybe concerned that you're not going to get them, that you may not trust the Father. But the Father has provided abundant good in all shapes and forms for what you need in your life expression. So do not be afraid to picture it, because you have your spiritual symbol as the protection and this or something better to bring it about in right and perfect ways. If you don't like the idea of treasure mapping, there's always what we call a desire list. And the desire list is another way of writing out all of the things which you'd like to see manifest in your life. So you can begin to write a desire list out. All of the things that you'd like to see manifesting in your life physically. Then next, all of the things that you'd like to see mentally and emotionally. The things that you would desire to see come forth, the desiring of a whole new you, prosperity-wise. Okay? A whole new you, all of those things. And then, of course, once you have written your desire list, you're not going to put it away. Maxwell Maltz, in his book Psycho-Cybernetics long ago, covered the idea that if you're going to get anything in your life, you must make a believer out of your subconscious. Because your subconscious is carrying forth the edicts or the thoughts that you have already given and the direction that you have already given to it now. So if you want to change it, you're going to have to make a believer out of your subconscious. And the way you do that is to take your desire list, keep it under your pillow or beside your bed, and each night before you go to sleep, take your desire list out and read it. Read it. If you need to change it, change it. If you need to add something to it that has come to you, add it. But for 21 days, take that desire list and read it over to yourself the last thing before you go to sleep at night. And then say, release it, and let the spiritual aspects of your thinking bring it to pass in the right and perfect way. Say, thank you, Father, for the right and perfect fulfillment. I release these desires lovingly into your hands, knowing that they will come about in the right and perfect way. But do it for 21 days, because it takes about 21 days to convince your subconscious that you really want these things and that you really want them to come about. Not only that, is you can make a positive equivalent list, which is similar to your desire list, but you can sit down and write a positive equivalent of all of the things that you may have on your list that you want to see changed. See, the positive equivalent of, say, if you have found yourself being fearful that there isn't enough to go around, then write a list that says, there's plenty to share and to spare. There is an abundance of good now. If you have been afraid to trust God, then I trust God freely and fully to bring my good to me in right and perfect ways. Make a list of positive, affirmative statements that are the positive equivalent of all of the things that you've written on your list. All of those states of consciousness which may, quote, be blocking the flow of your good, now write a positive equivalent list. And read that also. Read that also for about 21 days, making it firm in your consciousness. For each and every one of us really needs to work diligently with these ideas. There is another way that you can begin to start the flow of good in your life. And this, of course, goes back to the law. And the law is, as you give, so shall you receive. As you give, so shall you receive. The law doesn't say, as you receive, so shall you give. It says you have to give or release. Giving is an act of releasing. That's what giving is. It's an act of releasing so greater good can come to you. You cannot receive unless you have prepared the channel or the vacuum or whatever you want to call it for the good to flow into. So giving is a way of setting this whole thing into motion. Many times in my life experience, I have been working on something and I have been making positive statements about it. I've been using my affirmations, I've been doing my prayer work and my meditation, but things have not been happening. So I will go about and I will take a prosperity bank, and I'm sure that your center here has prosperity banks or some form of bank, or you can go down to your local bookstore, and most bookstores have some sort of a bank that you can put things into. And then I take a little sheet of paper and I write on that little sheet of paper some of the things that I am desirous of manifesting in my life. And I'll just write little key words, because if there's other people around, then I may not want them to know what I'm writing. So I will write down there a key word like DOE, and that means divine order, established. Divine order established. Or I will write key letters like that, and I'll put them on the outside of my bank. And then every day I will drop a coin in the bank, giving thanks for the positive fulfillment of my desire. And there's something, and it doesn't matter the size of the coin or the size of the gift that you're putting in the bank. It has nothing to do with it. It's the act of giving, of consciously giving to that and dropping the coin in, that begins the flow. And then you'll be surprised how quickly your good begins to flow to you. Just that very simple act of giving. We find that those persons who want to be prospered permanently adhere to the law of giving. And one of those laws, of course, is tithing, giving the first fruits of your good back to God. The farmer gives back to God the best seeds, the best seeds. And a lot of people have misunderstood that law, and they have thought that that was for the benefit of the church. Tithing is for your benefit because it establishes a consciousness of God first. God first. It sets into flow the act of giving right off the bat of the good that you have. So it is the act of beginning to give consciously, freely, and fully. Not because someone else deserves it, but because you deserve it. You deserve to be a free-flowing channel through which the goodness of God can come to you. Right now is the time to start with these things to do, to make a treasure map, to begin to hold that positive mental imagery, to begin to have a desire list of those things which you want to see to come forth in your life. Also to have this positive mental equivalent list of everything that you want in your life. And then to start giving. If you want love, you have to give love. If you want good in your life, you have to give good. If you want time, you have to give time. Tithe your time to projects. When I do talks and things like that, the very first thing that I do is I tithe a certain amount of the time in prayer. And if I'm going to do a hard task, I take a few minutes to sit quietly. And you say, well, I can't take time to sit quietly. I've got to do this. But you'll be surprised if you take a few minutes and tithe your time in prayer that the whole thing will go smoothly, easily, and quickly. And you will accomplish it in less time than you would have had to use at any other place along the way. We can do all of these things to bring about our good, but one of the primary ways that we can do it is in our meditative times. So Frank is going to give you a time now of beginning right now to establish a consciousness of a free flow of prosperity into your life now.
Just before we get into the meditation, I would like to piggyback on this idea of tithing and giving that Martha was speaking of by stating that actually, if you would really consider the whole idea of giving and receiving, you will see that all of God's promises are conditional. Sometimes, in a very dramatic way, we talk about the promises of God and the idea that God will give us everything and anything. Well, yes, this is true. However, there's a condition placed on all of that. God has placed a condition on our receiving. And the condition is what? That we must give first. We must act first. If this were to be a seminar in the Bible or on the Bible, we would see that there are so many instances mentioned throughout Scripture where this idea is brought out. We act first, and then God will act. So it's an interesting way of thinking about giving and receiving. God's promises are conditional, and the condition is that we act first, then God can always be counted on to fulfill his part. Well, with that, then let's prepare for a time of meditation. And I would ask at this time that you once again free your hands and your lap of anything and just sort of sit back and relax in a way that is right for you. And what we want to do now in this time of meditation is to reinforce those positive thoughts and feelings and ideas that we have identified concerning prosperity. We want to reinforce them by making them a greater part of our consciousness. So take just a moment now in the beginning, first of all, to relax in your own way. If there is any part of your mind or your body that feels uptight, then right now say to it, just relax and be at peace. Just relax and be at peace. And as you feel this relaxation taking over in your mind and in your body, then begin to work with the imaging faculty of mind. And do this by, first of all, drawing to mind a picture of those physical things, those tangible things that you want to demonstrate in your life. What was that one thing that you identified on your handout sheet? Or those 2 or 3 things on the physical level that you identified? Just draw a picture of that desired physical good. And just see it just exactly the way that you want it to be in the mirror of your mind. And as you picture that desired physical good, then just know that you have a right to it. Because you are a wonderful, beautiful child of God. And it is true that God wants you to have the desires of your heart. any good thing can be brought to you through you by the Spirit of God within you. So as you continue to picture that desired physical good, then just know this truth, that God wants you to have it. And you are right now doing your part in bringing it about by, first of all, establishing the consciousness for it. And whatever steps you are given to take along the way to the manifestation of that desired good will also be made clear to you. And now very easily and gently just begin to release that picture of the desired physical good. And begin to work now within your mind on those mental concepts concerning prosperity that you want to hold, that you really want to be a part of your consciousness. Is it the idea that prosperity is spiritual? Is it the idea that God really does work through an unlimited number of channels? Or maybe it's the idea that God's substance is truly inexhaustible, everywhere present. Don't try to force this concept into your consciousness. Simply call it to mind and dwell upon it for a moment. Once again, knowing that this is a right and good concept for you to hold. And through the presence and the power and the activity of God within you, it now becomes an integral part of your consciousness. You're doing your part in making this so, and God is doing His. So just release it now and let it go and know that God's perfect work is being done. And now, finally, call to mind those feelings that you want to hold concerning prosperity and concerning yourself in relation to prosperity. What are those feelings that you identified on the sheet? I want to feel free from guilt or fear. I want to feel loving. I want to feel that I deserve my prosperity. Whatever those feelings were that you identified, call them to mind. And now know that they are a part of your consciousness. Without forcing and without strain, simply say to yourself, I am free from guilt and fear. I am deserving of my prosperity. I am loving. And as you allow your mind to work on these feelings, once again know that through the presence and the power and the activity of God within you, they now become a part of your consciousness. So you can release them from your conscious thought at this moment, knowing that God's perfect work is being done. And now, to bring this time of meditation to a close, let's work with one more thought concerning prosperity, and a very important one it is. And that is that I accept my prosperity physically, mentally, emotionally. I accept my prosperity, physically, mentally, emotionally. Together, I accept my prosperity, physically, mentally, emotionally. Feel it and know it to be the truth for you and about you. And that your prosperity is now being brought to you through the Spirit of God within you. And for the realization of this truth, and for its manifestation in all of our affairs, we do give thanks. Amen.